Have you ever seen a high-level player who controls their character with such smooth and effortless motion? Maybe doing some skill jumps or hitting some b-hops? Well, that person has mastered movement. They've taken time out of their day and learned things that other people might not even be aware of. But don't worry, I'm going to cover all of these topics in this video, since I plan on covering everything there is to do with movement, since, you know, it's the ultimate movement guide, innit? Mastering movement involves gaining complete control over your character, not only when he's on the ground, but also when he's in the air. But before we get there, let's stay grounded and learn the most impactful movement-based skill. Counter-strafing enables us to have accurate shots without having to stand completely still. You see, when we start moving, we don't instantly jump to our max speed. It's gradual. Much like when we stop moving, we don't go straight to zero. So if we stop moving and shoot instantly, our bullets aren't going to be completely accurate because we're still slowing down. But to counter this, we can tap the opposite key to the direction we're moving. This counteracts the gradual drop in velocity and puts us straight to zero. At first, it might feel a bit strange, but we must get used to it. Every engagement you have will include counter-strafing, unless you've got a Mach 10 or something. Sort of like driving, you want to start off a bit strict in how you perform a counter-strafe to ensure you're doing it correctly. But over time, you'll start to feel the momentum as if it were a physical weight on your keyboard, kinda similar to the way you can feel your recoil. Counter-strafing can also create ease of aim, as if you're standing still, you're completely reliant on your tracking and flicking ability, whereas if you involve your movement, it can be a directional assistant to your aim. This is especially noticeable in pistol rounds, where people often get into what I like to call a tap dance. The speed you're travelling at is measured by determining how many units you travel per second. This is a unit, and this is a second. To make it simple, we can call this our velocity. Your velocity changes for each weapon you hold, and as we all know, the fastest is the knife. A little fun fact is that you actually run ever so slightly slower if you have util out, so if you're running out of spawn with a flash in your hand, then you could be blocking someone behind you. But this is very minute, I just felt inclined to let you know. We can actually exceed the terminal velocity by performing a skill called an air strafe. An air strafe is where, whilst at max velocity, we jump, let go of W, and then start turning to the side whilst pressing down the corresponding direction on your keyboard. All in all, it looks like this. Counter-strafing allows us to make jumps that would previously be impossible, because when we perform the strafe, the game engine for some reason speeds us up. Give it a go yourself. You'll find that the smoother the movement, the more you gain speed. You don't even have to be going forward for an air strafe. As long as you're turning the character's direction of motion to the corresponding key, it will work. Doing it backwards simply reverses the controls, and doing it sideways means we use W and S instead of A and D. A good entry-level skill jump you can practice is this self-boost on Ancient. You don't necessarily need speed, but you need to have full control over your air strafe. And the thing with air strafing is that it allows us to have full control over our character when he's in mid-air. We can use this for things like baiting out AWP shots, retreating around corners, skill jumps, and probably loads of other things. It's just really good to be able to do it. But if you want to take your air strafe to the next level, you can learn how to bunny hop, also known as bhopping. Bhopping is basically a string of air strafes that we tie together by jumping at the exact same time we hit the ground, kinda like skipping a stone. If done correctly, we won't have to use the W key at all. This is extremely difficult, and I'd regard it a fairly high level skill. So if you need some help, I'd recommend going onto a bhop server, which I just found with a quick Google search. These servers will often have a plugin where you can just hold down the spacebar and you'll automatically hit the bhop, so you can focus on your strafing and speed building. But in an actual game of Premiere, this won't be so easy. I'd recommend using your scroll wheel for jumping, because if we use the spacebar, we only have one chance to hit the bhop, whereas if we use the scroll wheel, we're technically pressing the jump key like 10 times in one motion. You see, we have to be very accurate when performing a bhop, otherwise we'll lose all our momentum. One of the reasons I'm saying this is because a lot of people try to bhop everywhere and they just end up blocking the team, and it's also very loud. But at the same time, if you do pull off a few bhops, you can get a good timing on your opponent since you'll be at your destination faster than they expect. Like if you're going to peek mid with an AWP, or if you're in a 1v1 and you want to beat the enemy's rotation. Although I must warn you, in a game of Premiere, you won't build up speed quite like a bhop server. These servers have plugins and custom tick rates to make this movement possible. In Premiere, if you exceed 300 units a second, you'll automatically be slowed down. That's not to say it isn't viable to bhop, but it's not going to be anything like the Foon days. Also, a quick side note that I thought I'd just mention is that since I use scroll wheel for jump, it actually frees up my thumb, and since I have 4 directional keys, I usually use my thumb for the S key, so I have 4 fingers for 4 keys instead of 3. But yeah, it's very minute, I just thought I'd let you know. Whilst on the topic of movement servers, it's not just bhop that's available, we also have the world of surfing. Quite similarly to bhop, simply having to turn 180 constantly, control your movement, and try and look as smooth as possible whilst doing it, is a really good muscular warm-up. Surf has the unique ability to either be really chill, fairly easy to complete a map, and then it can also be really stupid, because I can't complete it. Which means it's obviously something that requires a lot of skill. So if you want to learn how to surf, this is a list of the best server hosts. When you find a server with a decent map, jump into the wave and walk sideways into it, and kind of move your mouse like this. It's quite instinctive, but the rest of it is in the air strafing and the mouse movement. And although these servers are fantastic for warming up, they don't directly practice realistic scenarios. But don't worry boys, there's actually one other movement server that just so happens to be my personal favourite. Cause the objective of KZ is to climb, and whilst doing so, you run into seamlessly impossible jumps that somehow manage to isolate certain movement types. Completing a map usually takes me anywhere from 10 to infinite minutes, but you typically have a checkpoint system. Ooh, just editing the video boys and I realised there is no checkpoints on these maps, so sorry about that. But yeah, enjoy me sounding like an idiot talking about checkpoints and that, but there's actually none. Oh dear. I like listening to a podcast whilst playing KZ. There's just something so satisfying about the relaxing environment, which follows through to my physical state. I don't know, it's kind of different when you boot up the game with the intention to focus on your movement rather than your aim. It's like a different version of feeling warmed up. I feel warmed up in my aim when I get on to play Premiere, but when it's 2 AM and I get on KZ, I feel warmed up in my movement. Long story short, these movement servers are a game in of itself, where your movement becomes the main skill, and no other. Ladders. They need to be gone up diagonally so you have the most speed possible, and the same weapon velocity applies to ladders, so if you have a knife out, you'll go faster. When we reach the top of a ladder, we should shoot off to the side like this as to not block our teammates below us. Booting up the game with the intention of learning this might take up 10 minutes of your time, but it'll pay off at the start of thousands of rounds. You can do this move earlier on a ladder and add an air strafe to perform this skill jump on nuke, or you can simply just jump and you'll shoot off the ladder backwards. This can be helpful if you're going into a gunfight or if you want to get that extra bit of speed when rotating. Also, if you want to do the cool pro silent ladder move, it's actually really easy. You literally just spam the button you're using and you'll make no sound. The reason this works is because for the first split second of climbing a ladder, you don't make any noise. So we're basically just abusing this feature to be faster than shift climbing. With the switch from CSGO to CS2, there are certain subtle changes that have occurred. For example, the crouch jump now seems to be a jump crouch. This is only for higher jumps that require it, but it's still a bit weird. But if you just jump into a waist high platform, it's still viable to crouch jump. It just makes the whole motion smoother. Instead of jumping up, reaching the apex, and then coming back down, we're just going to go zoop, and we keep all our accuracy. I want to talk about skill jumps. I think skill jumps should be learned if you want to play at a high level. There are usually alternative ways to get where you want to go. The only difference is it usually involves a teammate to get there, or you'll be a bit slower in getting there. If you do want to practice them, load up the map after selecting Infinite Warm-Up, and then type into the console SV_cheats1. From here you can bind any key to no clip, so you can just keep attempting the jump over and over again. Some skill jumps are rather easy and have little effect on the round's outcome, but others are very difficult, and if you miss the jump, you could end up in a bad position. But I think if you're an avid KZ, surf or bhop player, you'll build up a natural ability to be able to just do it instinctively, which is what a lot of Counter-Strike is. But yeah, if you've made it this far in the video, then thank you. You've probably enjoyed it, meaning you'll probably like my other ones too. The next video I'm working on is actually going to be all about game sense, so if you want to be notified when I upload it, consider subscribing to the channel. You don't have to, but only like 10% of you guys are. So yeah, I'll catch you guys later. See ya.